Everyone in Boise had always seen Evelyn as the picture-perfect wife. To the neighbors, she was that sweet, soft-spoken woman who helped cover the household bills, kept her lawn tidy, and always smiled politely at community gatherings. She never raised her voice, never seemed to clash with her husband. That was the image Frank had worked so hard to polish, the devoted, submissive wife at his side, a silent accessory to his authority. But behind that glossy facade was something closer to a gilded cage. Frank didn't strike Evelyn every day, though that might have been easier to endure. Instead, he chipped away at her with a sharp tongue and endless arrogance. His words cut deeper than fists ever could. He belittled her cooking, her opinions, even the way she breathed sometimes. To him, Evelyn was useful when obedient, disposable the moment she pushed back. That Sunday afternoon, Caroline's house in Boise, Frank's mother's home, was full to bursting. The familiar smells of roasted turkey, buttery rolls, green bean casserole, and fresh-baked pies drifted through the rooms as siblings, in-laws, and a few neighbors crowded in for the traditional Sunday family lunch. Caroline reveled in her role as matriarch, orchestrating the event with sweeping gestures and pointed remarks. Evelyn, as always, was relegated to the kitchen, slicing vegetables for the salad, carrying pitchers of iced tea, and setting baskets of cornbread on the table, even though she wasn't the hostess. "Evelyn, the mashed potatoes need more salt." "You never get it right," Caroline said in that sharp, dismissive tone that seemed innocent enough to others but landed on Evelyn's skin like nettles. Evelyn swallowed the sting, inhaled deeply, and obeyed without protest. Outwardly, she was calm, her smile polite, but inside her chest a slow-burning indignation smoldered. By the time everyone settled at the table, laughter echoing and forks clinking against plates, Frank's voice cut through the chatter like a gavel slamming down. "My mother needs a loan, a few $1,000s," he announced, staring directly at Evelyn. "And you'll help her with that, won't you, darling?" The table went still. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dozens of eyes turned to Evelyn, waiting for her obedient nod. She inhaled, steadied her trembling hands under the table, and spoke in a measured, steady tone. "Honey, I don't think now is the best time to discuss this. Can we talk about it privately later?" Frank's face flushed crimson. He loathed contradiction, especially in front of family. His jaw tightened, and then, with a violent slam of his palm against the table, he barked, "How dare you contradict me here? If you don't like it, quit your job right now. When I tell you to do something, you do it. Clear?" Laughter died instantly. Forks froze midair. Caroline's lips curled into the faintest of satisfied smirks, as though Evelyn's humiliation was proof of order restored. But Evelyn didn't lower her gaze. She met Frank's eyes, her voice calm but edged with steel. "I'm not your servant, Frank, and I'm not a bank for your mother's whims. If it matters so much to you, then you lend her the money yourself." Her words hit the room like a grenade. The silence was suddenly heavy, broken only by the muffled shuffle of someone shifting uncomfortably in their chair. Then, with a swift, vicious movement, Frank stood and slapped her hard across the face. The sound cracked through the dining room like a whip. The world seemed to stop. Caroline pretended not to notice, busying herself with passing the basket of dinner rolls. Others glanced away, eyes down, as if the scene hadn't just happened. Humiliated, her cheek burning, Evelyn sat frozen. Her ears rang, but what cut deeper was not the slap. It was the silence of those around her, the complicity in their averted gazes. Frank's voice roared one final decree: "Get out of my mother's house. Don't come back." Evelyn rose, her step steady though her vision blurred with unshed tears. She walked out into the Boise evening, the cool air stinging her skin where his hand had landed. That night, back in the quiet of the family home in Boise, she studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. A red handprint still marked her cheek. She touched it gently, and tears welled, but they weren't tears of despair. They were the first tears of rage, proof of something shifting inside her. She could no longer play the role of dutiful endurance. Something in her had broken, or perhaps awakened. Before dawn, she sat at her desk, pulling open the hidden drawer where she had kept her quiet insurance, folders of documents she had been collecting for months, bank statements, proof of transfers he thought she would never notice. And most importantly, a power of attorney Frank had signed in desperation months earlier when his debts had piled high. He hadn't even read it, dismissing it as just paperwork. But Evelyn knew better. That document was the key to his undoing. Morning light had barely crept over the foothills when the phone rang, its shrill tone breaking the silence. Evelyn answered, her voice rough from the night before. "Hello." A hushed, nervous voice whispered back, "Mrs. Evelyn, it's Bethany, Caroline's maid. I need to speak with you." Evelyn froze, clutching the phone. Bethany continued, barely above a whisper. "They're lying to you. Yesterday, after you left, I overheard Frank talking to your mother-in-law. The money wasn't for her. He wanted to buy a gift for his girlfriend, a woman named Madison. Her birthday's coming up, and he was furious because he didn't have the money." The world tilted. Evelyn had endured humiliation before, but betrayal with another woman, crossed a line she could not ignore. Her voice came out strained but calm. "Are you certain?" "Yes, ma'am. I heard every word. And it's not the first time I've heard her name mentioned. He doesn't deserve you. He doesn't deserve anyone in this family." When Evelyn hung up, her hands trembled, but her eyes hardened. The humiliation, the slap, the condescension, all of it now converged into one undeniable truth. This wasn't only about enduring cruelty anymore. This was about betrayal. And she would not remain silent. That morning, Evelyn made her choice. There would be no turning back. That same evening, Evelyn picked up the phone with steady fingers and dialed a number she had memorized months before but never dared to use. She reached Attorney Sullivan, a man she had quietly researched and come to trust by reputation, and requested an urgent appointment. The next morning, she dressed with deliberate care. Gone were the muted dresses that once signaled submission. Instead, she chose sober but elegant clothes, a tailored gray jacket, a white blouse, and her hair pulled neatly back. When she paused in front of the mirror, she no longer saw the woman who had endured years of scorn. She saw a strategist. While Frank strutted through his daily routines, still blind with arrogance, convinced he controlled her, Evelyn was already laying out the plan that would end his reign. Attorney Sullivan's office in downtown Boise smelled faintly of polished leather and old wood. The morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, casting long stripes across the law books lined neatly on the shelves. Evelyn arrived early, clutching a folder of documents tight against her chest, her face set with resolve. Sullivan, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and the quiet authority of someone used to fighting uphill battles, greeted her with respect. "Mrs. Evelyn, how can I help you today?" Without hesitation, she opened the folder and spread the papers across his desk. "I want a divorce, and I want to protect everything that's mine. Here's the power of attorney my husband signed months ago. It gives me full authority over the house. I need to know how to use it to stop him before he tries to hand it over to his mistress." Sullivan leaned forward, adjusting his glasses, and studied the document with careful attention. His brows lifted, impressed. "If this holds, you're already the legal manager of the property. He cannot do anything without your signature. It's in your hands, Mrs. Evelyn. The real question is, what do you intend to do?" Evelyn exhaled slowly, her voice firm and clear. "I want him to taste powerlessness. I want him to understand he no longer controls me. Prepare the eviction notice. When it's ready, I will deliver it myself." The following days were a strange balancing act. Evelyn continued her routine as though nothing had changed. She arrived at work with polite smiles for her colleagues, laughed at small office jokes, and even responded to Frank's trivial texts with carefully chosen words. To him, she was still the same obedient wife. In reality, every free hour was devoted to dismantling the life he thought unshakable. She quietly opened a new bank account, moved her savings, and shifted her investments into safer hands. Each transaction felt like laying another brick in the foundation of her independence. Meanwhile, Bethany, Caroline's maid, became her unexpected ally. In hushed phone calls, Bethany passed along pieces of information that cut like glass. She reported when Frank and Caroline discussed plans for the house, when Madison's name was whispered like a secret, when paint samples and furniture catalogs were spread across Caroline's dining table. One evening, Bethany called with her voice trembling with disgust. "He brought Madison into your home while you were at work, Mrs. Evelyn." They spoke as if the place was already theirs. She was walking around, pointing at the living room like she owned it. Evelyn's reply was cold and deliberate. "Let them dream. The harder they dream, the harsher the fall." Night after night, Evelyn sat at her desk in the quiet of the family home in Boise. Papers covered every surface: deeds, financial records, copies of Frank's reckless transfers. She rehearsed every step, memorizing dates and details until there was no room for error. Outside, the foothills of Boise stood calm against the night sky, but inside that house, Evelyn was preparing for war. Frank, blind to the approaching storm, flaunted his mistress in subtle ways. Long lunches at local diners, late-night drinks at downtown bars, a bouquet of lilies delivered to Madison's apartment. He laughed arrogantly with his brothers and boasted, "Evelyn is such a fool. She's never had the guts to stand up to me. Soon that house will be our castle, Madison's and mine." The irony was exquisite. The woman he ridiculed as weak was the one quietly holding the keys to everything he wanted. When Attorney Sullivan finally handed her the sealed eviction notice, Evelyn held the envelope in both hands as though it were something sacred. It wasn't just a legal document. It was freedom on paper. It was justice. She waited patiently for the right moment. It came on a sweltering July afternoon in Boise, the kind of heat that shimmered on the asphalt and pressed heavy on the skin. Evelyn dressed with quiet elegance. A crisp white blouse, black trousers, her hair twisted into a bun that revealed the sharp lines of her face. Her expression carried no trace of submission. Instead, she radiated the calm certainty of someone who had already won before the battle began. Flanked by two Ada County sheriffs, she approached the family home in Boise, the house Frank had claimed as his castle. From outside, she could already hear laughter spilling through the open windows, the kind of careless laughter of people who believed themselves untouchable. Evelyn tightened her grip on the envelope. The moment had come. The house in Boise was alive with smug laughter and false dreams. Inside, Frank sat at the head of the dining table, his mother Caroline and his mistress Madison flanking him. The table was covered with glossy catalogs of furniture and home decor. Pages rustled as they debated curtain patterns, wall colors, and which sectional couch would look best in their living room. Madison leaned back with a satisfied smirk, acting as though the family home already belonged to her. They were so certain Evelyn was still tied up at work and wouldn't be back for hours. But the front door opened, and the soft creak of her footsteps echoed through the hallway. Madison was the first to notice. With a sneer, she leaned forward and let her words drip with contempt. "Well, look who's back. The bitter housewife." Frank chuckled, a cruel edge in his voice. "What are you doing here, Evelyn? I thought you'd finally learn not to meddle in things that don't concern you." Evelyn didn't flinch. Her eyes were steady, her steps deliberate. She motioned toward the Ada County sheriffs who had followed her inside, each one firm and silent in uniform. She handed one of them a thick envelope. The deputy opened it, unfolded the papers, and began to read aloud, his voice slicing through the smug atmosphere like a blade. "Court-ordered eviction. The legal owner of this property demands the immediate removal of Frank and any unauthorized occupants." For a moment, time stopped. Frank's eyes widened, confusion spilling into panic. "What? That's absurd," he shouted, ripping the paper from the deputy's hand. "This is my house." Evelyn took a step forward, her expression calm but unyielding. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "No, Frank. You signed the power of attorney yourself. Remember? Months ago, when the debt collectors wouldn't stop calling, when you were drowning and desperate, you gave me full authority over this property. I am the legal administrator. And this home belongs to me." The color drained from Frank's face, only to be replaced by a furious red flush. Caroline leapt to her feet, her voice shrill. "That can't be true." "Lies. Evelyn tricked you." She spat the words as though venom could undo the truth. Madison shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The arrogance she had worn so proudly only minutes before melted away. She reached for her purse, her eyes darting toward the door. Frank, shaking with fury, lunged at Evelyn. You'll regret this. No one humiliates Frank Morgan. Before his hand could reach her, the deputies moved in, pinning his arms with practiced force. Sir, calm down. Any aggression will result in immediate arrest. One warned, his tone sharp and final. Frank thrashed, cursed, and strained against their grip, but his fight was useless. The man who once boasted control over every room he entered was reduced to a spectacle, arrogance cracking into rage, rage crumbling into desperation, and desperation collapsing into pure panic. The living room that had just moments ago echoed with shallow, polite laughter had erupted into chaos. Caroline paced in tight, frantic circles, her hands trembling, her voice cracking with a mix of fear and shame. Madison hovered near the doorway, her designer heels clicking nervously against the polished hardwood, her purse clutched like a shield. Evelyn, however, remained perfectly still in the center of it all. She didn't yell. She didn't gloat. The quiet intensity of her triumph radiated from every calm movement, every unwavering glance. Her eyes fixed on Frank, unflinching. "You called me useless," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "You said I was only good for following orders. But while you buried yourself in lies, schemes, and debt, I was managing the things that actually mattered. You signed those papers without even reading them because you assumed I was too weak to use them. And now," she let a pause stretch like steel, "it's that very weakness you underestimated that has taken everything you thought was yours." Frank let out a guttural scream. "No. This house, this is my life. You can't do this." Madison raised her hands defensively, inching backward. "Frank, I'm not getting dragged into this. I didn't even know it was hers." With a cool flick of her wrist, she slung her purse over her shoulder, landing the final blow to his pride. "Good luck living with your mom," she said, voice sharp. "I don't do losers." She strode out the front door without a backward glance. Caroline rushed to her son, her desperation thinly veiled behind a shaky facade. "Come live with me again, Frank. We'll figure this out," she pleaded. But even her voice couldn't hide the humiliation etched deep into her features. Frank sank to his knees, fists pounding the gleaming hardwood floor, his voice breaking. The man who had once wielded control and intimidation like armor was now nothing but a shattered shadow of himself. Evelyn remained serene, composed, and unyielding. With a single, authoritative nod, she signaled to the deputies. "You can take them now." The sheriffs guided Frank and Caroline out the door. The gate clanged shut behind them. Silence reclaimed the house, heavy and complete, as if it were breathing with relief. Evelyn approached the living room window. Morning sunlight spilled across the walls, catching on the tiny dust motes that danced in the air. For the first time in years, the house no longer felt like a cage. It felt like freedom. She pressed her hand to the doorway, inhaled deeply, and allowed a genuine, unguarded smile to spread across her face. There were no shouts of vengeance, no triumphant cries. Only quiet, the quiet of peace, of justice served not through cruelty, but through patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve. Outside, Frank's curses rattled against the wind, fading beneath the stern authority of the deputies. Inside, Evelyn stood still, listening. That silence, calm, unwavering, was her victory. Loudest and clearest, it rang louder than any scream. The very next day, she changed every lock, installed new security cameras, and walked through each room as if rediscovering her own heartbeat. Boise mornings felt brighter, evenings stretched with ease, and days rolled forward like calm waves. Evelyn was no longer the woman who flinched under her husband's anger. She was hers, completely, fiercely, and without apology. And one truth remained: she would never bend to anyone again. She would no longer wait for permission, validation, or approval. Her self-respect would always come first. Only then would she allow herself to love again, because when someone proves they don't deserve you, there's no hesitation. You walk away and you never look back. You just heard this one from Stories by Sue. If it resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments, I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching.